It's Friday night in 1987, and you are meeting your friends from work in town. It was arranged last week. There are no mobile phones. You could have called them on the telephone, but you don't have their numbers. You could look through the phone book, but there's no need. They'll be there. They said they would be. Where are you all meeting? Well, it's surprising how many of the trendy bars and clubs of the 1980s have been lost. Take the Pig and Whistle, for example, which was under the Merion Centre close to Woodhouse Lane. It was a good starting point and popular with students. Today the open-air escalators and underpass that were in front of it are gone, and there is even a new building on the site. Also in the Merion Centre was the Wayfinder. Maybe a bit too quiet for meeting your mates, but welcoming just the same. Jumbo Records, which is a bit of a Leeds icon, has now taken its place. Perhaps it would be better to meet at the Nautical Wheel, now the Mahi restaurant. It was originally an octagonal building connected to the Merion Hotel by a first-floor glazed bridge. It was known as the General Wade when it first opened, after General Marshal Wade, who had set up his troops on Woodhouse Moor in 1745. A very popular pub to meet up in the 80s was Oscar's, which was a cellar bar on Albion Street, downstairs below the Bond Street Centre. This also had an earlier name and was known as the Hog's Head at first. Before it closed, it was the Mixing Tin. Sadly, it is no longer a bar, and there is just a door to mark the spot. So where are you going next? It's the 80s, so you always told your friends where you would be going next, in case anyone arrived late. After that you could go anywhere, and they just had to try and find you, but you always said where the second pub would be, just in case. A good place to go after Oscar's was the Bond, which was on the opposite side of Albion Street, around here. The 1987 phone book gives the address as 28 Albion Street, which would mean the Bond used to be here. However, in my memory it was just slightly further up, so I'm unsure. The original buildings were replaced as the Trinity was being built. Another popular but long gone place was the Ostler's Arms on Trinity Street, behind where Franco Manca is now. The Franco Manca building is new and replaced the HMV record store which stood here before. Behind the gate is an old alleyway, which gained access to the pub and also ran down to Briggate, similar to the Whitelocks alleyway and others nearby. One of the favourite bars was the Bank on the corner of Park Row and South Parade. Access was down these stairs, past the doorman and in, to the noise and excitement. Not far away, across the hedgerow and under the library, was Stumps. It was cricket themed, though I am not sure the revellers paid much attention to that when the place was packed on a Friday and Saturday night. I could imagine it doing really well if it opened up again, with some outside seating. On Merion Street was Harveys, which was on 2 levels and described itself as a wine bar. Inside there was access to an internal open balcony. As you can see, the building is now demolished, and a new development is growing in its place. The recent incarnation of the White Swan on Swan Street harks back to the early history of the pub and the City Varieties Music Hall, but in the 1980s it was known as Barney's, named after Barney Colahan, the producer of The Good Old Days, a famous televised theatre show that ran for many years. In Leeds in the 80s, the trendier places were spread out, and moving from one to another could often involve a long walk. The Sunset and Vine was on East Parade. In earlier years it was called Brahms and Liszt and Panache. It was very popular, especially because it was close to the nightclub above. More of that later. During the 80s there was a definite trend towards cellar bars in the city, and people found themselves drawn to the streets south of Park Square, where there was an increasing selection. Cullen's was one example, previously known as Heads and Tails. People packed in, and they somehow even had a pool table. In the 1980s, pubs had to call last orders at 11 o'clock. Maybe this was the time to have some fast food. Ranchburger was one of the first burger takeaways in the city, predating McDonald's. Its outlet at the corner of the Hedgerow and Albion Street was popular, but it is long gone. If you wanted to stay out, you needed to get into a club. Maybe an out-of-town club such as Upstairs Downstairs in Armley, or the Richmond on Richmond Hill. Both of these have now been demolished. Other out-of-town clubs included Fox's, next door to what was known as the Mexborough Arms on Harrogate Road, Chapel Allerton. It's now the Wetherspoons-owned Three Hullets. If you were staying in town, you had at least 10 nightclubs to choose from. This included Adam and Eve's on Central Road, downstairs behind this door. Nearby was Martine's, which was under the Corn Exchange. Access was through this door to the club in the cellars. It had a low roof, and I remember a less strict entrance code than some of the other clubs. Madison, for example, which was on East Parade, above the Sunset and Vine, had quite a strict entrance code. Groups of males would often be deterred, and there was a dress code which extended to most places at that time. No jeans or trainers, for example. Though this didn't seem to put people off. Further along York Place from Cullen's was Digby's, once again in a basement, and accessible through Lens Bar. The building was demolished in 2008, and a hotel built in its place. Top Cats on Cross Belgrave Street was also downstairs, just around the corner from Ike's restaurant. It later moved to a new location at the Merion Centre. Just across from Top Cats was Mr. Craig's on New Briggate. It was a new club in the late 80s and even included a VIP area. Rockshots at the bottom of Briggate had a new name in 1987, but it is possibly better known to many as Belinda's, which is what it was called at the start of the decade. In the Merion Centre was Le Phongraphique, which was a sanctuary for alternative music fans. It was accessed down a staircase, yet another basement. A retail space now stands directly above it. At the time of recording, it is the pop-up shop of the Leeds street artist Burley Banksy. Also in the Merion Centre was Tiffany's, arguably more mainstream and a larger venue, accessible through a door which used to be here. Inside, there was also an upstairs club called Bally High. The space has since been occupied by a number of nightclubs. At the eastern edge of the Merion Centre was Panama Joe's. This was a big space, which seemed to vary in its popularity. Behind the Merion Centre was Ritzy, and in the same building was Central Park. As I remember it, at a certain point in the night the connection between the two clubs was opened and you could move between the two. In the 70s it had been Cinderella and Rockefeller's, both owned by club entrepreneur Peter Stringfellow. Today, a Wetherspoon stands on the spot. There is one club from the 80s which has managed to survive, and that's the Warehouse on Summers Street. The Warehouse was one of the first in the country to introduce techno and dance music, and it quickly became a magnet for club goers from all over the UK. The club also showcased live music, and it provided a stage for up-and-coming 1980s bands making their debuts, such as Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the Stone Roses, and Depeche Mode. It might surprise you to know that all the clubs had to close by 2 a.m. in the 80s. Time now to head to the Alternative on New Briggate, which satisfied many people's need for fast food at the end of a long night. It became an institution, but sadly it has also gone. There should be a blue plaque. Well, it's time to get a taxi, or the Nightrider bus service if it is still running. Or maybe you spent all your money and you're having to walk home. Hopefully, You've had a good night. Thank you for watching.